Hey everyone, I'm thrilled to share a riveting story packed with unexpected twists. Today we will look at the story of Avery Bennett, a woman who faced a crushing near-death encounter and returned to share what she experienced beyond this life. Trust me, this tale will tug at your heartstrings. But first, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from, so drop your city in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to do so and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on stories like this one. Hi there, I'm Avery Bennett. Honestly, I never thought I'd find myself here recounting such an intense experience. For a long time, I kept the details of that night to myself. It wasn't fear of judgment holding me back. It was more of a struggle to process what had taken place. How could I articulate something that goes beyond the realm of our everyday knowledge? How can we possibly describe an experience that turns our whole perception of life and death upside down? But here I am, feeling it's finally time to share. Now let me clarify that I'm not any kind of expert or inspirational speaker. I'm just a regular woman who went through something truly remarkable. An ordinary mother who discovered an inner strength she never knew was there. I experienced death and came back, feeling there was more to my existence than I had previously imagined. My story isn't just about a violent encounter or a brush with death. It's about facing real death and returning unexpectedly. It's about uncovering the hidden layers of life that we can't even fathom, and sometimes hitting rock bottom is what helps us truly see the light. Before all of this unfolded, I lived what many would call a typical life. Sure, I had my good days and my tough times like anyone else. I was a mother to Dylan, my cherished son who had been relying on a wheelchair since he was 8 years old. I was also married to Simon, and I thought our relationship was solid until the revelation of a betrayal that rocked my world. I won't sugarcoat it. The months leading up to that fateful night were pure hell. Physically and emotionally drained, I dealt with an unrelenting ache in my left arm that no one around me seemed to take seriously. It felt as though my body was trying to warn me about something crucial. But honestly, I was too busy juggling everything else to listen. Then on a night that began like any other, everything changed. That was the moment I transcended the boundary between life and death and returned to tell my tale. I understand if skepticism arises regarding what I'm about to share. For some, it may sound unbelievable or like a mere fantasy, but I assure you, every word I'll recount is genuine. Life can really throw you for a loop, can't it? I've got a story to share, one that begins with heartbreak but eventually finds its way back to hope. This is about my journey through death and what I learned on the other side. It's a tale filled with pain, love, tough choices, and a new purpose. My hope is that my experience resonates with you and prompts some reflection on life and the decisions we make every day. So let's rewind a bit. Months leading up to that life-changing night were chaotic. My marriage felt hollow, a facade, and I was left scrambling to pick up the pieces after a deep betrayal. Simon, the man I had devoted years to and the father of my child, didn't just let me down in our relationship. He also shattered my trust in my closest friend. The gut punch came when I found out he was involved with her. Not only was she my best friend, but she was also pregnant. Imagine the humiliation as this scandal became public. Suddenly, I was in the spotlight, and my pain was on display for everyone to see and gossip about. The whispers followed me wherever I went. The pitying glances were unrelenting. I felt so exposed during that time. Simultaneously, there was my son, Dylan. He had been confined to a wheelchair since he was 8, and witnessing his struggles was heartbreaking. I worried constantly about whether he'd fulfill his potential, spending sleepless nights imagining all the limitations he might face. But there was more to come for both of us, as life often has a way of surprising us. Around that same chaotic period, I started experiencing this weird pain in my left arm. It wasn't a typical ache. It was a troubling mix of numbness and weakness. At times, it felt like I was carrying the entire world in that arm. But honestly, who had time to dwell on such things? Everyone seemed more interested in the unfolding scandal than in my well-being. As for Simon, once he realized the baby my ex-best friend was carrying wasn't his, he was desperate to mend the damage. He begged for my forgiveness, claiming he had changed, that he wanted to repair what had been shattered. But, honestly, how do you even begin to rebuild after something like that? Each of his attempts felt like salt in an open wound, and the love I once harbored for him slowly transformed into something much darker, bitter resentment. Every time I caught a glimpse of him, memories of betrayal flashed through my mind, dragging up feelings of humiliation. Any sweet words he spoke felt insincere. They fell flat, like echoes in a vast empty room. I felt like I was stuck, completely trapped in a marriage that had lost its meaning, in a life that felt utterly unfamiliar. The longing for an escape was strong, but I was at a loss about how to make that happen. Each day wore me down more, both physically and emotionally. My body ached and my spirit was shattered. Unbeknownst to me, I was nearing a breaking point, and something was on the horizon that would radically alter my existence in ways I couldn't foresee. The night came quietly, just like so many before it. I was really striving to find a sense of normalcy, desperate to break free from the unrelenting tension that had taken over my life. So I opted to play poker with friends. It was a perfect diversion, a little pocket of time where I could momentarily forget everything. In those moments, I felt like Avery Bennett again, not the woman who had been wronged, not the anxious mother, just me. The laughter around the table felt real, bringing a breath of fresh air into my lungs after a long time underwater. But of course, peace is fleeting. Just when I started to feel some semblance of happiness, Dylan staggered into the room, ready to spoil the moment. He always had that uncanny knack for breaking any happiness I managed to grab hold of, and tonight was no exception. His eyes were bloodshot, and the smell of alcohol on his breath was unmistakable. He'd clearly had one too many. He demanded I come home with him, and I felt a whirlwind of emotions. Anger flared up inside me, fear crept in about what might happen if I refused, and an overwhelming exhaustion threatened to swallow me whole. In a moment I still don't quite understand, I gave in to his request. Perhaps I was just too tired to keep fighting. Maybe in some distant corner of my heart, I clung to the hope that somewhere, somehow, redemption was still possible. Or it could simply have been the urge to resolve the situation quickly so I could return home to my son Simon. In his inebriated state, Dylan insisted I take the wheel of his new car. I had never driven it before, and the thought of steering a vehicle I didn't know made me jittery. But once again, I found it easier to comply than to protest. We climbed into the car, and the air was thick with unspoken tension, a weightiness that clung to me as we drove. The journey felt endless, and I could sense Simon's eyes on me, watching closely. My grip on the steering wheel was so tight that my fingers turned pale, completely glued to the road ahead. The silence that filled the car felt heavy and tense until Marcus broke it, launching into a conversation about our marriage. He spoke about his desire to return to the past, his words swirling with regret and blame. One minute, he was asking me to forgive him. The next, he was pointing fingers, saying I hadn't moved on from our troubles. Then, in an unexpected moment that shifted everything, he reached for my hand. It wasn't a gentle move. It was driven by a reckless urgency. I felt him tug on my diamond ring, the very ring he had placed on my finger years ago, a token of love that now felt like a relic from a distant past. I instinctively pulled back. That ring still meant something to me. Not for Marcus, but as a reminder of who I had been, a woman who once believed in love and loyalty. That small act of resistance unleashed a rage in Marcus I had never witnessed. His face twisted into a mix of anger and an unsettling intensity. Before I could even process what was happening, he lunged at me, and suddenly, everything changed. In mere seconds, I was pinned in my seat, the weight of Simon pressing down on me, his arms rendering me helpless with a strength I never knew was there. The stench of alcohol surrounded me, choking off the air I desperately needed. Where once I saw tenderness in his eyes, all I could see now was a terrifying fury. I struggled to scream, but my voice fell silent in my throat as his forearm dug into my neck, the pressure suffocating. My lungs screamed for air, burning as I fought against this unbearable hold. With the steering wheel abandoned, my hands clawed at Simon's arms, but it was pointless. He was far too strong, enhanced by the haze of alcohol. Everything around me started to fade, black spots dancing in my vision, while the sound of my heart thudded in my ears, a relentless drumbeat counting down my remaining moments. A wave of panic washed over me as the realization sunk in. I was fighting against my own body, desperate for the air that remained just out of reach. In that chaos, thoughts of Dylan, my cherished son, flooded my mind. I couldn't shake the thought of how he would cope without me, especially considering all the struggles he already faced. My mind drifted to my family and friends, and I reflected on the things I still wanted to do, the conversations left unfinished, the aspirations I hadn't chased. Just when the weight of it all felt too heavy, as if I was losing this battle, something incredible occurred. It was like a veil had been drawn back. The agony and fear vanished. In that instant, I felt unburdened, like I was soaring above it all. I briefly thought I'd lost consciousness, but clarity washed over me. I could see Simon, still pressed against the seat beside me. I noticed the ghostly pallor of my own face from an outside perspective. It struck me then, I wasn't trapped in my body anymore. Instead, I was adrift above, observing everything unfold like some surreal film. Dylan finally grasped the gravity of what had happened. I could see the horror in his eyes as he released his grip on me, shaking my motionless form, calling my name. I wanted to respond, but it was clear I was no longer part of that world. At that moment, an understanding washed over me. This wasn't just a fainting spell. I had crossed over. You'd think I'd panic in the face of such a revelation, but strangely, an overwhelming sense of tranquility enveloped me instead. Then, just as I began to absorb that new reality, something extraordinary happened. A light appeared, warm and mesmerizing, brighter than anything I had ever encountered. It filled me with a kind of love I hadn't known existed. With an inexplicable clarity, I realized my journey was only starting. As the incandescent glow embraced me, I felt myself being drawn away from the scene, from Dylan, from my own lifeless body. It was like floating, yet I was guided gently by a loving force. Fear and pain were absent, only a deep sense of safety and belonging remained. As I moved away from that chaotic moment, I noticed my awareness morphing. My senses expanded beyond the physical. It was as if I could perceive everything at once, the colors becoming brilliant, the sounds sharper, and the energy of my surroundings pulsing through me. Suddenly, I found myself in a realm that words failed to capture. It was like being everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The concept of time faded, past, present, and future melded into one endless continuum. As I began to grasp the reality around me, things that once felt completely out of reach suddenly clicked into place. It was like I had access to all knowledge in the universe. I discovered the essence of life, the nature of love, and how everything is woven together in an intricate web. Every choice we make, every action we take, leaves its imprint on the vast tapestry of existence. Instead of seeing my life as a simple timeline, I perceived it as a rich mosaic, each moment, each connection, each struggle contributing to who I am today. I reflected on missed chances and valuable lessons, but strangely, I felt no regrets, only a sense of clarity and acceptance. Amid this profound realization, a presence enveloped me. It wasn't a being in the conventional sense, more like an energy pulsating with unconditional love, making me feel utterly safe. This presence was like a guide, illuminating my path, helping me navigate the complexities of my thoughts and emotions. We communicated, not through words, but through an exchange of emotions and understanding. My questions about life's meaning, the reasons behind suffering, and what lies beyond death were met with immediate insights. It was as if the truths I sought were always there, just waiting for me to uncover them. I came to see life on Earth as a learning journey, where challenges are simply stepping stones toward our growth. Love emerged as the mightiest force in the universe, transcending even the boundaries of death. My thoughts drifted to Marcus and his actions. Rather than feeling overshadowed by anger or bitterness, I found compassion in my heart. I recognized his own pain, his fears, and insecurities. While his choices were undeniably wrong, understanding his struggles allowed me to see the hurt soul behind his actions. I then thought of my son Dylan, and an overwhelming love surged within me, expanding endlessly. I recognized that his life, with all its hurdles, had a profound purpose. He was meant to impact many lives, imparting lessons in courage and resilience. As I embraced these revelations, I felt a pivotal choice before me. I could either remain in this blissful state of comprehension or return to my previous life. The decision weighed heavily on me, a part of me longed to linger, to delve deeper into this newfound understanding. While I was enveloped in a profound sense of infinite love and wisdom, something extraordinary broke through that tranquility, a vision. This vision revealed that my time on earth wasn't finished yet. It ignited within me a newfound purpose and the courage to confront whatever lay ahead. As I drifted in this heightened state of awareness, soaking in universal truths and feeling a strong bond with everything around me, the scene shifted dramatically. Suddenly, I found my gaze pulled toward a remarkable sight, almost like watching a film about the future. In this vision, there was Dylan, my son, who I had once seen confined to a wheelchair. But here he was, not only standing but confidently walking. He appeared older, perhaps in his early 20s. The familiar features of his face glowed with a radiant smile, one that embodied real happiness and satisfaction. Standing beside him was a young woman. They held hands, exchanging loving glances that spoke volumes. In that moment, it clicked. She was his wife. My heart leaped with joy, witnessing my son so enveloped in genuine, heartfelt love. Then the scene morphed again. Now they were in a warm, inviting home. Dylan sat on the floor, engaged in play with two small children, my grandchildren. The laughter filled the air, with the kids joyfully yelling, "Daddy!" as he picked them up and twirled them around. It was pure joy, and I could almost feel the energy radiating from their interactions. I caught glimpses of Dylan in an office setting too. He was immersed in important work, surrounded by books and papers, his expression one of focused determination. I could see he had become a respected professional, someone who truly makes a difference in the lives of others. The vision kept revealing more about his future. Dylan speaking to crowded halls, sharing his story of resilience and inspiring those who listened. Awards and recognitions came next, all accolades for his valuable contributions to society. I pictured him aging gracefully, enveloped in love from family and devoted friends. In every moment I witnessed, Dylan glowed with determination and a joyful embrace of life. It was the future I had always wished for him, yet never really believed could happen because of the limitations I once perceived. As each scene unfolded, it became clear to me why I was having this vision. It was a reminder, a gentle nudge to understand that my son would need me, not just during his childhood, but also as he journeyed into adulthood. I recognized my essential role in his transformation, guiding him from that boy in a wheelchair to the fulfilled, joyful man I saw before me. In that moment, everything clicked. With unwavering determination, I realized I had to return, no matter how tough the journey ahead might become. It wasn't just about me. Dylan would be counting on me. He would need my support to tackle the future's challenges, to keep believing in himself when others doubted, and to pursue his dreams no matter what. Even as that vivid vision of him began to fade, the feelings it sparked within me lingered. An overwhelming blend of hope, resolve, and unconditional love. I understood that the road would be rocky, riddled with doubts and obstacles, but clarity had finally dawned on me. I had a purpose now, a reason to fight fiercely. As the last glimpse of Dylan slipped away, I steeled myself to embrace whatever lay ahead. My heart was set on returning to be the mother he needed, to guide him towards that bright future I once imagined. However, before I could make my way back, there was one last journey awaiting me, a trip to a realm I never thought existed. This place would fundamentally alter my perception of what life and death truly meant. Just when I believed the ordeal couldn't become any more intense, I experienced a sudden and jarring shift. The warm, welcoming light that enveloped me started to fade, replaced by a heavy, suffocating darkness that clawed at my very being. I felt as if I was being pulled down into an abyss that challenged everything I thought I knew. It was nothing like the hell described in stories, no demons with pitchforks, but something much more visceral and terrifying. The air grew thick, a toxic mix of sulfur and despair that made it hard to breathe. The temperature swung violently from biting cold to searing heat. Around me swirled anguished souls, ghostly figures writhing in torment, not confined to physical bodies, but instead trapped in their own nightmares. Some writhed in agony, surrounded by flames that didn't consume them, but rather ensured their endless suffering. Others found themselves in a darkness so profound it seemed to extinguish all hope. I witnessed souls forced to relive their worst moments, stuck in a never-ending cycle of guilt and regret. The noise was overwhelming. It was a chilling orchestra of anguish, filled with screams and desperate pleas for mercy, an unbearable echo of despair that filled the air like a heavy fog. Amidst this horrific tableau, something caught my attention. It struck me that a few of these wretched souls appeared to have been cremated after their death. Curiosity mingled with fear, and I turned toward the faint figure of light that had stayed with me. "Are the ones who were cremated here because of that?" I asked, my voice trembling with confusion and terror. The realization hit me not through spoken words, but rather through a profound understanding. Cremation isn't a sin. What truly matters is the life we live that led us here, not the physical state of our bodies after death. This insight caused me to pause and think deeply. I began to see this place not as a punishment from a heartless God, but as a mirror reflecting each person's choices and actions while they were alive. It was striking. Each individual seemed to construct their own version of despair based on how they acted, what they thought, and the intentions they held. I witnessed souls who suffered because of the pain they had caused others. Some were ensnared by their own greed or their self-centered ways, while others remained trapped due to their indifference toward those in pain. There were even those who seemed stuck simply because they couldn't find a way to forgive themselves, endlessly punishing themselves in this cycle of regret. As I observed, a wave of compassion swept over me. Many of these souls were completely unaware that they could choose to leave. Their entrenched habits clouded their ability to see a way out. In that moment, my thoughts drifted to Marcus and the violence he had brought into my life that ultimately led me here. Strangely, instead of anger or a thirst for revenge, all I felt was sadness for him. It became clear that if he didn't alter his path, this fate might await him too. My experience in this harrowing realm imparted a crucial lesson about personal responsibility and the weight of our decisions. I realized that every choice we make, every word we utter, and every action we perform possesses the potential to uplift us or drag us down into despair. Eventually, I felt a gentle tug that pulled me away from this dark place. It was as if an invisible thread was leading me back to my physical self, back to the life I had momentarily left. This transition felt gradual, but it was significant. With the weight of this journey behind me, I now harbored a new perspective on good and evil, heaven and hell. I recognized these concepts not as tangible locations, but as states of being shaped by the choices we make. My sojourn through this frightening experience filled me with renewed resolve to embrace life once more. I realized I had a vital mission: to care for Dylan, support him in realizing his full potential, and to encourage others to make kinder choices and pursue the light, even in the bleakest times. Armed with this understanding and sense of purpose, I felt prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In an instant, everything turned upside down. I found myself abruptly yanked back into my body, feeling as though I was trapped in a heavy prison of flesh and blood. Just moments before, I had been floating in a realm of limitless peace, my consciousness expanded and full of universal truths. Now, though, everything about my experience felt like a fleeting dream, dissipating like morning mist. The more I tried to grasp that knowledge, the more it eluded me, slipping through my fingers like water. As I struggled to breathe, my lungs felt as if they had forgotten this simple act. Each inhale burned painfully, my chest throbbing, likely due to the attempts to revive me. Every heartbeat was a monumental effort, and the contrast between the excruciating pain in my body and the serenity I had known was staggering. When I finally opened my eyes, the world around me appeared odd, almost unrecognizable. The colors seemed muted and the sounds were muffled, as though I were looking through a thin curtain separating me from reality. That's when I saw Simon. He stood nearby, his expression a mix of shock and terror. Trembling, he shook me, calling out my name, his hands gripping me with a desperation that felt repulsive. The man I had once cherished now resembled a stranger, someone who had almost extinguished my life. I attempted to speak, but a painful rasp was all that escaped my lips. "Let me go," I managed to whisper. To my dismay, Simon either didn't hear me or chose to ignore my plea, continuing to manipulate my body in a misguided attempt to help. What he viewed as a rescue felt to me like an additional violation. With newfound strength, fueled by adrenaline, I pushed him away despite my body protesting against the abrupt motion. I staggered out of the car, my unsteady feet meeting the cold ground. The night air hit me like a wave, refreshing and sharp. I inhaled deeply, relishing each breath as if it were my last. Senses heightened yet dulled, I took in the familiar but strange sense of wet grass and the distant barking of a dog, while the flickering streetlights added an eerie charm to the scene. Behind me, Simon got out of the car, his voice a frantic blend of anxiety and sorrow. "Avery, please, let me help you. I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me." The words hit me like blades, piercing through the silence as I turned to face him. The shock washed over me. This wasn't the same man I had dreaded just moments before. In the light of everything I had gone through, he appeared diminished, small, pathetic. His eyes were filled with fear, regret, and confusion. It tugged at something inside me, a fleeting feeling of compassion, almost as if I were looking back at the chaos we both had created. But then the reality of his actions crashed down on me again. The mark of his hand still throbbed on my neck, and memories of suffocation and despair flooded back like a dark tide. "Don't come any closer," I managed to say, surprising myself with the firmness in my tone. "It's over, Marcus. It's all over." I could see him take a step forward, his hand reaching out as if he wanted to connect. My instinct kicked in, and I instinctively retreated. "Please, Avery, we can talk this through. I can change, I swear." That plea shattered something deep within me. It felt like a dam bursting. All the pent-up anger and fear I had held for so long spilled out. "Change?" I shouted, my voice reverberating against the stillness of the street. "You nearly killed me, Marcus." "No, actually you did. I died back there in that car." I was met with a blank stare from him, confusion etched on his face. How was I supposed to convey the journey I had just endured, the death I had faced, the hell I had glimpsed? "You don't get it." The words flowed from me like a torrent. "I've seen things you wouldn't believe. I've grasped truths that are beyond your understanding. And you know what? I realize that this," I said, gesturing fiercely between us, "isn't love. It never was." Marcus stood frozen as I unleashed years of hurt and anger. I laid bare his betrayal, the way he had shattered not just our marriage, but also my confidence and self-esteem. I talked about the burden I had carried in attempting to hold our family together while sacrificing my own happiness. Then I began to speak about Dylan, our son. "He's destined for greatness, Marcus. He's going to conquer all the hurdles in his way. He'll inspire so many and find true love. I have to be there for him, to help him along that path." With each word, a sense of strength coursed through me, not born from anger or resentment, but from a resolute purpose. I felt an unwavering certainty deep within me. That night marked a turning point in my life. "It's over, Marcus," I said softly this time, a calm resolve in my voice. "I'm leaving, and you won't stop me. You won't follow me. If you're serious about changing, do it without me or Dylan." I said this, feeling a surge of determination as I walked away. I could hear something clatter to the floor behind me, my diamond ring still in his grasp, but I didn't turn around. That part of my story was closed. As I stepped into the early evening darkness, I felt my weary body complain with each movement. Yet inside, I found clarity. My heart felt lighter than it had in ages. Sure, in some ways I had died that night, but Simon had found a new lease on life. He was stepping forward with purpose, ready to embrace love and make a meaningful impact. Venturing into the unknown felt strangely comforting, a kind of peace washing over me that I hadn't known in years. I was aware that the road ahead would be challenging. So much healing awaited, both in body and spirit. But for the first time in a long time, anticipation bubbled within me. I realized that life is incredibly valuable, each moment a treasure, and that true love wields immense strength. With this realization, I felt equipped to tackle whatever obstacles lay ahead. The aftermath of that life-altering night ricocheted through the following days, weeks, and months. It was a whirlwind of emotions and trials. My recovery wasn't solely about healing physically. It spanned emotional and spiritual realms as well. My body needed time to mend from the trauma. For weeks, my throat throbbed painfully, a relentless reminder of everything I had endured. Simple acts like swallowing or even speaking became labored, and the bruises on my neck lingered, as if my body held on to the memory far longer than I wanted. but the physical pain, while torturous, was just scratching the surface. The deeper struggle lay in confronting the emotional and psychological remnants of the attack. Initially, sleep eluded me. Every time I shut my eyes, I was thrust back into that terrifying car ride. The panic, the suffocation, the consuming darkness. Each horrifying detail returned with painful clarity, prompting me to seek professional guidance. I recognized I couldn't navigate this alone. Therapy sessions turned out to be vital for my healing. Initially, it felt daunting to revisit my trauma and express my innermost fears. Yet bit by bit, I started to unravel the layers of what had transpired, not just the assault, but the entire brush with death. Discussing my journey beyond life felt particularly daunting. How could I possibly convey such a deeply profound experience with mere words? I worried my therapist might dismiss me as delusional or chalk it up to some sort of hallucination. The journey of recovery wasn't just about regaining my footing. It also meant navigating a whirlwind of emotions, especially when it came to Marcus. I found myself grappling with anger and betrayal, yet there were glimmers of understanding too. I remembered feeling compassion during that intense experience, realizing that his actions were rooted in his own struggles. The challenge lay in reconciling these opposing emotions, all while ensuring I kept myself safe and sound. It was a tough road, but I was determined to find my way to forgiveness. Throughout this whirlwind, Dylan stood by me like a rock. In those initial chaotic days following the incident, he was a bundle of confusion, bewildered about why we had to stay at my sister's place and where his father had vanished to. I spoke to him gently, trying to convey things in a way that made sense for his age, steering clear of the heavy, traumatic details. Watching Dylan's resilience always lifted my spirits. His ability to adjust to our new life was nothing short of inspirational. That vision I had of his bright future became a guiding light, motivating me even when things felt overwhelming. Slowly but surely, I began piecing my life back together. I found a snug little apartment for us, one that felt like home. Getting back to work was another hurdle. Focusing was tough at first, and I could feel the weight of curious gazes from my coworkers and their sympathetic expressions. But as the days rolled on, I started to find my stride again. Perhaps the most profound shift was my newfound view on life. Having brushed against the idea of death, everything felt more meaningful. The simple joys that previously slipped through my fingers, Dylan's laughter, the warmth of sunlight, that first sip of morning coffee, became treasures I cherished. I took up meditation, hoping to tap back into that sense of peace I'd felt during my extraordinary experience. Of course, it wasn't always easy. There were days when reality felt so distant from that blissful moment that I doubted it was real. Yet in quieter times, that connection reemerged, reassuring me that there was something greater out there. My approach to spirituality transformed significantly too. I didn't strictly follow any one religion, but I nurtured a deep trust in the universe's goodness and the intricate web that binds us all. Every hurdle I faced turned into a chance for growth, and I began to embrace those opportunities wholeheartedly. As time went by, I began to view every encounter as an opportunity to share kindness and love. It struck me that my journey wasn't simply about healing, it felt more like a transformation. The woman who came out of this experience was not the same as before. She was stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. I had confronted my darkest fears and even faced death itself, emerging with a renewed sense of purpose. I realized that healing isn't a final destination. It's a continuous adventure. Sure, there would still be tough days ahead, moments filled with doubt and fear, but I now possessed the tools I needed to tackle whatever challenges came my way. I felt an unwavering belief in myself that I could handle anything life threw at me. So daily, I pressed on, not just focusing on recovery, but also embarking on a journey of rediscovery and rebirth. This path began on that fateful night, but led me to places both within myself and in the world that I never thought possible. Years later, reflecting on that life-changing evening, I recognized how much I had evolved. That near-death experience wasn't merely a singular event. It served as a turning point, a striking catalyst for profound change. One of the most significant transformations was my relationship with Dylan. The vision I held for his future became my guiding star, shaping every decision I made concerning him. I began to see beyond his physical challenges, shifting my focus to his boundless potential. Encouraging him to dream profoundly and to refuse to settle for anything less than he was capable of achieving became my mission. Dylan continually amazed me with his resilience. He tackled each hurdle with a determination that inspired me anew every day. When doctors proposed a new experimental therapy that might help him regain some mobility, Dylan didn't hesitate for a moment to say yes. The journey was long and often fraught with pain. We had our share of frustrating days filled with tears and moments when giving up seemed tempting. Yet, whenever feelings of discouragement threatened to overcome us, I clung to that vision of Dylan, imagining him, years down the road, walking confidently, smiling, and truly living life. That image fueled our motivation to press on. Seeing Dylan take his first steps without assistance years later was an overwhelming moment for me. It wasn't some miraculous event. It was the culmination of relentless hard work, perseverance, and unwavering faith. In that instant, I truly grasped why I had been given a second chance. My outlook on life and death had transformed completely. Death used to send chills down my spine, but now I've learned to approach it with a sense of calm. Not that I'm eager to leave this world, absolutely not. My journey has shown me just how valuable life truly is. The way I see it now, death isn't the conclusion, but rather a stepping stone to a different form of existence. This understanding has reshaped how I live day to day. I've started treasuring each moment and valuing every interaction. It's been enlightening to let go of grudges and to stop being so quick to judge. Once you realize the turmoil we create for ourselves through negativity, it makes cultivating love, compassion, and forgiveness feel like essential priorities. Interestingly, my path took a surprising turn too. I began sharing my story, starting in intimate support groups before moving on to larger gatherings. It turns out that my experiences, tough as they have been, could offer comfort and hope to others navigating their own rough patches. I never set out to become a spiritual leader or anything lofty like that. Still, if sharing my journey could help someone find strength amid their struggles, I felt I had to take that step. Now about Marcus. It took quite a while for me to reach a place of forgiveness. Our relationship was never close, and for many years he stayed at a distance from Dylan's life. But when Dylan hit his teenage years and felt a pull to reconnect with his father, I decided not to stand in the way. I saw this as a chance for Dylan to embrace the values of forgiveness and compassion that I hold dear. Their reunion turned out to be a healing experience for all of us. I observed Marcus as a man transformed, someone who faced his demons and emerged from the darkness stronger than before.